yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, in some places it's not a super friendly. What's the time in China?
3 o'clock in the morning. It's really, how to say, not friendly for Asian people.
And I was complaining that here is 9 p.m. I will not.
9 p.m. It's okay. It's just a
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's the end of the day, which will be a little bit tougher for us, but all in all, it's okay.
Yeah. Before I joined the meeting, I had a short sleep. Yeah. Otherwise, it will really be, how to say, sleepy. Welcome,
Okay,
agent. Okay. Shall we start?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So welcome to Ccamp session. As we just mentioned that maybe this time the timing is not so friendly for the Asian people. But anyway, let's just overcome the challenges. Okay. So move to the next. So let's start from the loadware. I think we all have read the loadware information, and which is how to say defines the IETF process and the policies that we have to follow. Next. And this time we have only one session with 2 hours. I think the time should be sufficient. And then you can get more detailed information from the agenda link about the agenda. Next. And then this is the agenda. So I think this time the agenda is still quite busy, and we have 8 presentations. So we hope that we will have fruitful discussion this time. Next. And then this is some information about the Meet Echo, and I think we are using the Meet Echo and we know how to use it. Next. And then for the Meet takers, so I'm not sure if our Secretary Oscar is here or not. Maybe he's not, coming. And but anyway, we really hope that anyone could take the minutes, and then that will be much appreciated. And blue sheets, no blue sheets required, and it will be, how to say, automatically created. Next. So for IPR process, I think we all know how to follow the IPR process, and then I'm not going to repeat the information again. Next. And then the information is about the mailing list. We always encourage people to use the how to say utilize the mailing list as much as possible to discuss anything about technologies. And especially there's one more reminder, which says that working group consensus is determined on the mailing list rather than to the online meeting or even to the face-to-face meeting. Even though we got some consensus here, we still need to bring to the mailing list for confirmation. Next. Okay, it's for you, Daniele.
Yeah. Sorry to jump from one window to the other, but I've not yet learned the latest features of Mitico. So, an update since the last meeting. We have no new RFCs, but we have 2 drafts in the editor queue, the layer 0 types and the Davison-Young. And one in the ISG processing, which is the transport MBI applicability statement. Actually, we are still running the IPR polling for 2 other drafts. So as soon as the IPR polling is complete, we will start the last call for them as well. There is one which is expired, which is the Davison impairment validation information model. I think we have not received any update on this draft, but I think it's just a matter of reviving it. The document is absolutely still alive. We have plenty of documents on the agenda today, which is very good, from the layer 0 types update, the optical impairment topology. We have one draft, an update of a draft from TIS, which is the applicability of SCTN to packet optical integration. We have the FlexiGrid documents, the media channel Young and the Young document. An update, a quick update on the transport MBI applicability statement, etc. We don't have these drafts on the agenda today. They're not discussed, but we have some updates that we received offline, which is the applicability of OTN to networks beyond 100 gigabits. It has been updated just to keep keep alive. This is one of the 2 drafts that I was mentioning before being polled as preparation for working group last call. And then we received some information, the OTN ones, which are not discussed today. We have the OTN topology Young. A new revision has been submitted to align the prefix to the latest discussion that we had on the mailing list, and namely on the usage of OTNT as prefix in the Young module. This one is basically ready for the working group last call. This is this table for a while. Probably as we did for the optical drafts, we will make a sort of cluster progressing the layer 1 types and the OTN topology to start with. Then on the OTN tunnel model, since the last meeting, we have 2 new revisions. They were basically submitted to improve the description of the model in section 3, and to align the augment statements to the latest version of the IETF. So next steps, there will be a similar discussion on the prefix, and then we will proceed up with the last call, depending on the IETF model, the generic model that is almost ready in the TIS working group. Liaison and communication. We received the usual periodical liaison from ITUT study group 15 on an update on the OTNT standardization work plan. It was submitted in May, actually. As usual, you can find the link to the liaison in the data tracker. You can find it here for simplicity. An action is needed. A reply is needed, as usual. A joint reply between a Ccamp and PLS, PALS, PC, and TIS. I think that's it. Is there any question before we move to the first presentation? If not, we can proceed. Who was the presenter of this draft? Was it Sergio, Dieter? Sergio, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. Is just my problem, or someone else can hear Sergio? Just me.
We cannot
Hello?
hear Sergio.
Hello?
No, okay, now I can hear Sergio.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, good evening to everybody, or good morning for someone. I'm Sergio Bellotti speaking, and I'm going to make an update about optical impairment topology Young model. Next. Okay, so we had from the normally we have a weekly call, and so we have a practically stable team that is following the update of the model and actively contribute to the model. From the last IETF, we added two parts. We in particular work about the triare generator part, and we added an entire new section 2.6 describing the general characteristic of the functionality, the typical realization from architecture point of view, and we discussed in our meeting two possible options to address the triar functionality. On the end, we have chosen one, and at the moment the model is based on one of the two, but well, since it is a working group draft, it is fine that everybody knows what were the two options, and there was a long debate about that. So just to provide the characteristic of the two different options that we have discussed. There is still a pending issue related to the triar, and then we will see what is. The other part that we complete, we have addressed in the previous version the C+L band for amplifier. We complete that with also ROADM part. Okay. This slide shown how we are the typical typical architecture from a triar. On top, we have the back-to-back or bidirectional architecture. And in this case, a pair of transponder, or to better say transceiver, are used to create the regenerator part, and the 2OT, two transceiver that are used for this functionality can be used only for this functionality. So it is not possible to use the client port for that transponder as in a typical drop case. On the bottom part of the slide, there is the unidirectional architecture, in which instead the 2OT can be also used as not only for triar, but also if it is needed, also to come back in the usage of point of OT normal termination at drop point. So this is the typical characteristic of architecture. Next slides, please. Okay, here I present the characteristic of the first option. Practically, the first option is based on consideration regarding the 3R functionality, are how is composed. So the physical similarity with respect to the transponder model. Because, as I said, the 3R functionality is provided by a couple of transponder. So our choice with this option is to provide new capability in the list of the capability already provided for the optical transceiver. We have the same physical layer attributes and optical impairment, and we have the same possibility to use the same topology entity, local link connectivity list, that we also use in the add-drop part for the RODAM model. From a functional point of view, there is we adopt the fact that even if it is clear that 3R is not at the end of the path, but we consider from a functional point of view the fact that there is a termination of the signal of the line path, even if not the tunnel. So having a reference to the tunnel termination point as we use in this option, it seems reasonable. The seamless description with the spec transponder can make it more easy the task for the implementers and make understandable the model from the user. At other point, we have talked that we have no dependency of the other models. And let me, other point is that we consider that as a natural approach in case we start from a bottom-up approach, in the sense that we looking from a physical characteristic of the functionality. I mentioned the fact that we use, next slide, please. That we use the same entity, topological entity, and in fact we can exploit again the local link connectivity list, and the fact that we can have optical impairment from LTP, that in this case is degree, towards the tunnel termination point that in which is mapping the optical transponder and transceiver. So the tunnel termination point local link connectivity list can provide the impairments of the RODAM towards the 3R. On the right, I just report what was the characteristic that we used for the RODAM with a drop with the optical impairment part, and we just reuse the same type of attributes for the transceiver, for the 3R. Next. Okay, here is the young update about the model, but you can check that directly the draft. Next slide. Okay, so this is the other option that we discussed a lot in our meeting, and the other option was to consider the 3R as a service function. So practically a real new topology entity. The important point is that from the path computation perspective, as I said, we use in the option one a similarity, and we use still the tunnel termination point. But from tunnel termination point perspective, the TTP the tunnel termination is an input of a path computation. So is not subject of constraint or path selection. From triar instead is different, because triar is an output of a path computation, as they need to have the capability of particular information that permit selection, optimization, and the constraint, for example, including or excluding some triar with respect to the other, so require that some type of information that normally tunnel termination point does not need. So with the option, this option 2, we have no behavior changing in the path computation, because the TTP is separated from triar. Instead, in the option 1, using always the TTP, we need to consider that in case of triar, we need to have some information regarding the TA matrix and so on, that, by the way, is provided in local link connectivity list, but is changing a bit the behavior in this context. It is this option 2 is a more natural approach top-down, so based on the on abstraction, and providing a service function is client-friendly, because you have a topology unique identification. You have indication of you can easily indicate the feasibility of the resources, or if the resources is taken by another service. And okay, the TRIA metric, we said that we have also the TRIA metric also in the option 1. The last point, but not least, is that okay, the triar functionality is we know that is not always at the layer 0, because the regeneration is provided also considering the ODU part. And service function is inherently modeling layer violation, and it protects this possibility for possible concern regarding the layer violation. Okay. Next. Okay, for the C+L band, we have completed, as I said, the addition related to the RODAM. We base this on the capability to provide link ID and application OD, so to identify uniquely amplifiers, so solve the issue to have more than one amplifier on one band. That is one of the issues that we discussed in the last IETF. The model is already future safe, that can provide more than 2 bands in case of possible extension. And it is been also solved the other part of the issue related to the mapping between the physical input part of the for the amplifier and the RODAM, the input output port from play amplifier and booster, and the OMS link, so the abstraction view of the model. This mapping is a physical mapping, and so we consider that should be internal to the controller and not exposed by a northbound interface. Next. Okay, for the open issue, we have closed 6. I put here the GitHub link in which you can see and track, and it is tracked the open issue of our drafts. We have closed 6 issues from the last IETF meeting. We have still 21st open issue, but Two of them out of them are typical young issue, not related to our drafts, and so we have some clarification and need to raise point to the netmod. And we have at least 5 of these issues in which we have already discussed a proposal, and so we need just to wait for the next pull request to fix the point. And the other real, we have from a real pending enhancement of the model, we have just 3 issues, because the 83 and 23 is all related to the pending issue related to the 3R. So the real enhancement of the model, the issue is just 3 related issue. Next, please. Okay, so we mentioned that we have still an issue related to the 3R. The issue is related to how to assess. As I said that the 3R functionality is done by a pair of transceiver. The point is that while it is trivial, the fact that you can associate 2 transceiver in case of OTSI-G is composed by only one OTSI, this is not the case for multiple OTSI. So in this picture, we just represent the case of the single OTSI, so no problem in this case to associate that. This is what is represented here is the unidirectional case architecture. Next, please. But in case instead we have, for example, a digital client at 400 gigabit that will be supported by 2 OTSI at 200 gigabit. In this case, we need at the regenerator point to mux an inverse multiplexing. So we have 2 possibility, depend of how the 3R is made. If the 3R is made at OTSI-G level, so at the composing of the part of the related to the OTSI, in this case, you need to have inverse multiplexing on the other side of 3R regenerator. And in this case, it is not clear how I can connect the transceiver 5, for example, with transceiver 8 or transceiver 7. What is the characteristic or information that is needed to see that this is the real connectivity that you mean? One of the possibility that has been discussed to solve the issue is to have a pool of transceiver and to connect this pool of transceiver, not one-to-one. This is one of the possibility that we discussed. In case instead the 3R is made at the OTSI part, in this case we have no issue because it is a one-to-one and there is no inverse multiplexing. The same is even if with the characteristic of the UniDir happen in the case of UniDir. This is what is represented here. For the UniDir, there is also the point, but we can solve that of the association on the transceiver that is providing the one of the direction, for example, transceiver 5 and transceiver 7. But also in this case, we can have inverse multiplexing unless we are still at OTSI per OTSI level of 3R functionality. Next. Okay, next step. We have already some discussion about the how to solve the issue. As I said, for example, with the pool, there is also some proposal regarding a specific spatial connectivity matrix. So the first, we needed to finalize the 3R functionality with the association required, addressing the issue in which we already have a discussion solution that imply both some model enhancement and editorial, just editorial enhancement. And the plan is to be ready for doctor review for the next IETF meeting, with also the hope that will be face-to-face, and to have a stable version by the end of the year. This is the plan. I'm finished for me. Any question?
Thanks, Sergio. Any question? Actually, I know most of the people interested in this topic are attending the weekly calls, but maybe yes. I don't know if it's worth bringing to the list the discussion on the two options on 3R regeneration to get a little bit more feedbacks from the working group. I don't know how you feel about that. Do you think that the situation is mature enough to come to the mailing list and discuss pros and cons about the two options there?
Well, we have a solution, a young solution at the moment. But yes, I mean, the discussion, in my view, there is no one model, one option that is right and the other wrong, depending of the perspective. As I try to depict, one is a bottom-up approach, the other is up down, so is a bit a different point, but there is no one is right, the other wrong. So the choice that we made to go for the moment with this solution is that more or less the majority of the people in the team was more in favor to that option. But frankly speaking, no one has said that the other is wrong. So I don't know.
So,
in the sense, we have mature in the sense that the discussion has been done, but well, I do not expect many help today. But well, if the chairs want think that it's better to write something also in the mailing list.
No, because I understood that the idea was to choose among them. So are you saying that the plan is to keep both options open? To allow for both of them?
Okay, I repeat, at the moment, the model is already there, so it is based on the option one. So we have said, okay, for the moment, since the majority is more happy with this type of option, try to have the young model based on that, and provide the information to the working group so that they are aware the fact that has been a discussion, that there is two options, and again, no one of the two are wrong, but just a choice of the preference of the majority of the team. but since the draft is a working group draft, this is why I talk also the other option. It is not a nominal. So
okay, that's fine.
so
That's fine.
yeah.
Okay, if there is no other question, we can move to the second one. Will you presenting that as well?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Okay. Here the updates of the draft that is layer 0 type extension. Just next slide, sorry. Okay. Just a brief background of the scope and why it has been introduced this draft. The layer 0 type, and this is represented the last version, has been reduced in the scope, addressing just a spectrum management to cover just impairment-free optical draft in order to progress the layer 0 type towards the publication, and in parallel to permit to go ahead with the, for example, IETF Vuitton topology that is based on this importing of this layer 0 type. So we have addressed in this draft instead the complementing of the content of layer 0 type, reconciling what are the various information regarding transponder that was spread in different drafts in the Ccamp, covering the information regarding the impairment aspect, and using for many of the draft in Ccamp a common Young structure and definition. And the intention of this draft is to have a life cycle parallel of layer 0 type. With the draft will be updated with the content of layer 0 type as soon as it will reach publication. And then the draft will change the name to provide the version 2 of the layer 0 type, but with also all the information that will be inside the layer 0 type extension. The next slide, please, Daniele. That I already commented last time, but just reporting what I said by words and providing the schema of the life cycle of layer 0 type extension and layer 0 type with the example of in the bottom of the optical impairment that is importing already layer 0 type extension structure. Okay, so next slide, the status of the document. So we have already added a new other Young structure with respect to the last time. In particular, all the structure used by optical impairment topology, but in perspective, the intention is that also the interface parameters that Gabriele or Gert will talk about after this presentation, we also introduce and use the same grouping. We added new identities for power equalization. We move definition of the fiber type identities. We have a new grouping for penalties, related polarization dependent loss. We added the new grouping related to the C plus L band. and change also the definition of specific attribute like OTSI carrier bandit and related attributes like Nyquist spacing factor, roll-off, and crosstalk penalty. All these have been introduced from the last version. Next, please. So the next step, the first step is the work group adoption. The IPR polling is practically completed because it was missing just one vote, but now is arrived. So I would expect that the polling for working group adoption can start as soon as that after IETF, I suppose. And then obviously the scope of this draft is the other young structure that can be used and by other all the other drafts and promoting the aspect of sharing as soon as possible the same structure for layer 0 model in Ccamp. Last but not least, this is the important slides.
I don't think everyone will appreciate that.
Yeah, but you do should appreciate.
I do.
But are you trying to make Duncan sad?
Sorry, but
I mean, are you trying to make Duncan sad or agent sad?
I think that was the goal. Okay. Any question, or we jump to the next one? I see Gabriele is already in the queue. Please, Gabriele.
Okay, I try to unmute. I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes.
Just one comment about the layer 0 type. The document itself is very good, and I like it. But also I saw that there is an extension of L0 type, and I would like you, Daniele, and Fatai to indicate the way we can proceed with the extension, because the extension is, as far as I saw, is important as well of the as the working group documents. So even if the extension is still an individual contribution.
Yeah, but we did the polling to adopt it, didn't we? Sorry,
Okay.
the IPR polling, which is preparing for the adoption.
For the L0 type working group document, yes, of course. Exactly. But I was referring also to the extension. So how we can transition to the extension smoothly, and can have the extension right away available in terms of consolidated document. So, yeah. For example, that is, I can talk later on this point at the end of my presentation, just to clarify.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Adrian?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabriele.
Yeah. I think what we were hoping to hear was the chair say, yeah, now we've done the IPR polling, we are going to start the adoption poll on pick a date and let us know, rather than just it's sort of in the queue.
We will be starting it after the IETF. If I'm not mistaken, one reply was missing. That's what we were waiting for.
So I think Sergio just said that last reply had come in, but I may have misunderstood.
So I missed it in the black hole of my mailbox. As soon as I will process all of them, we will start the adoption. Sergio, did you want to
Yeah.
add something
No,
before we
yes,
start?
Daniele, just confirm what Adrian understood in the sense that yes, the last vote has been completed in the last 2-3 days because one of the authors was vacation. So so come back and already answer. So yeah, at the moment IPR we can consider concluded.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. I simply have not yet seen it.
Yeah.
Great, very good.
Okay.
So, Gabriele.
Okay,
Please.
thank you, Daniele. I'm Gabriele Galimberti, and I present now the state of the art of the DWM interface parameters Young on behalf of the other co-authors. Next slide, please. So the goal here is pretty evident and consolidated. Number one is to define the set of parameters good enough to, let's say, understand what kind of interface a possible controller is starting to manage, and then also to keep all this information aligned with the other IETF working group documents like the impairment topology, layer 0 types, and so on. Next one. Okay, since the last version, we did a lot of modification. One recommendation here I forgot to mention in the presentation, just have a look to the schema and disregard for the moment the Young definition because they are not updated. So what we did is to reshape all the optical impairment models, trying to make them closer to the T topology optical models. This make the possibility to retrieve from the module the three kind of information. So can address by the standard models, organizational models, and also the explicit models. In the last version of the document, actually, we were covering only the explicit models and the standard models. So that if you look at the topology optical Young models, you look at the models we define in this document are pretty the same. Then we have the possibility to retrieve the supported models. So all the models that a possible DWM interface can support, and then can be more than one. We can also retrieve or collect the current models. And then, of course, it is possible to provision some models, some parameters. That is the way we reshaped the document. Next slide, please. But we have to clarify a point here. So basically, the supported models are all read-only. The current models are all read-only. The provisioning models could be exactly the same of the current models, and at that point, some of the parameters will be read-write, and other parameters will be read-only. But with this solution, actually, we would have exactly the same model shape and the same model definition. Another solution is, another option is to keep the supported models list and the current models that are all read-only exactly the same, and then split or just provision the read-write models. At that point, we would have different models, basically a different schema. That is something we need to address and discuss. One has the advantage to have 3 possible schema exactly the same, but let me say the number of the information will flow back and forth from the module to the controller could be quite a lot. The other one, the option 2, could be more efficient and effective, but we need to define different kind of models for the provisioning models. That is something we need to discuss and address for the next time. Next slide, please. Okay, the next step, of course, we need to keep always an eye to the ITUT recommendations and their evolution, because we don't want to misalign the ITUT for the standard models. We have to keep in sync with the optical impairment topology Young, as well as the layer 0 types. And as soon as the layer 0 type extension will become a working group document, at this point, really, we could use the new definition that have been set in that currently individual contributor document, aligned with the terminology and on the contents of the draft and so on. I think once we have done this realignment, and whenever the optical impairment topology Young and the layer 0 type will go into the last call just after a revision, also this document could be could go in last call. That's all from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you to you. Any comment?
Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I wasn't necessarily paying that close attention, but am I right in saying this model augments the IETF interfaces model? Is that what's been proposed here? If so, my question is the interface that's been modeled here just a layer 1 optical construct, or does it still have like the layer 2 properties that an IETF interface normally has?
Okay, this draft cover only the layer 1 and is extending the interface model, the IETF interface model. So if you look at the layer 2, for example, you should look at the interface models already available in IETF. So
what my question is for these interfaces that you're modeling, do the layer 2 statistics, like the MAC address, MAC accounting, not MAC accounting, those sort of statistics, do they make sense? And does it make sense if you had an IP address configured on one of these interfaces?
That's a good question, Daniel. As based on the models we have, these are pure photonics model. So we could address also the statistics, but the statistics are related to the bit error rate instead of the power, instead of, let's say, threshold crossing, power threshold crossing, and so on. So we could extend also a little bit going to the OTN, but again, if you go to the OTN and then we, let's say, we go after the FEC, building block. At that point, yes, we start talking about OTU, ODU statistics. But again, there are other kind of documents already available covering this part. But what probably is missing is a document that is joining all the different layers together in a way that from Ethernet statistic you can correlate the photonics statistics.
Yeah.
But
So,
that is something that we need to work on, Daniel.
So I think my fundamental question is whether augmenting IF interfaces is the right choice rather than having a separate top-level list for like layer 1 controller objects. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Ah, sorry. We should start from a different route, a different naming. The idea at the beginning was okay, as we are talking about interfaces, and we see that there is already defined a bunch of interfaces starting from layer 2, whatever. Why not also adding the DWDM interface as well? At the end, if you look at a router, you can have layer 2 interface, GigE, 10 GigE, 100 GigE, as well as, for example, a DWDM interface today. So,
yes, I just think there's sort of an implicit assumption that the things that are in IETF interfaces today you'd expect to be able to do either L2 switching over or L3 forwarding. So I think we just need to be careful here and just check that we're not effectively breaking some assumptions by augmenting that one.
Okay. I think we can discuss a little bit offline if you want, maybe on the mailing list. I understand what you have in mind and maybe could have sense, but probably needs to discuss more in detail on how to drive this solution.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Next one is Omian. Omian, you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Gabriele. I noticed in your slides, maybe page number 3, you are mentioning we are aligning with the mode ID from the impairment module. But when I read the draft, it looks like we are using the G.698.2 instead of a standard mode. So is it deliberately, or we have some reason behind?
Maybe there is a mistake. Thank you for noticing that.
Oh, okay. Good note alignment. Thank you.
Great. So Dan, you're the next. I assume you'll be sharing from your screen, right?
Yes, I think so.
Great. Grant screen.
Okay.
It says all the slots for the requested media are already taken. Maybe I have to stop sharing before. Stop sharing. Grant screen.
Yes, great.
Yes, now it works.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. This is a relatively short update on the FlexiGrid work. We have 2 documents currently in progress. We have the FlexiGrid topology document. So this obviously describes sort of the components that we use to generate the FlexiGrid topology. And then we've got a companion document, which is the FlexiGrid media channel document. So this is essentially setting up our tunnel across a FlexiGrid topology. So let's start with the first document. So we've been working on this for a while now. We are up to version 10. It's now stable. We've had a early review from the Yang doctor, so thank you very much. We essentially received a number of really useful comments. Some were editorial, others in sort of direct relation to the Yang code itself. We have responded to the list regarding these sort of Yang code issues, and we do need to follow up a couple of these comments. There are sort of things about use of containers and things like when statements as well. But we've tried to be consistent in sort of defining when statements with some of the other Yang work, including WSON. So we think we don't think there's a particular issue, but we would just like to clarify that with the Yang doctor. In addition to sort of just cleaning up the code, the most recent version includes a much more detailed explanation on how we augment some of the imported Yang. So these will be things like how we use the topology and so TT topology and tunnel, and also things like how we use bandwidth and things like label augmentation attributes, etc. We have now, I believe, agreed on the prefix, so the naming prefix. So we've updated the document. It's now FlexGT, so FlexiGrid topology, and this should now be consistent with all of the other documents, some of which have already been updated as well to remove the hyphen. It seems to be one of those discussions that just seem to go on for a long time with lots of opinions. But it's good, I think, that we finally reached a conclusion there. There were sort of several comments actually made by a couple of the more recent reviews about the use of informative and normative. Obviously, if this has to be implemented, this document needs to be implemented, then we have to be very clear about any ancillary work that should also be reviewed or understood in detail in order to actually implement this. So I think we've made those changes now and moved what were sort of informative to normative, but it's probably worth just taking another look at that if you have a vested interest. I suppose I should just say thank you to Adrian and Haomien for their reviews of this document as well. And there's also been some parallel discussion with another document that the working group worked on, which is the IETF Ccamp WSON Yang document. I think it was mentioned actually by Daniele at the start. And that's currently in the RFC editors queue, and there was a couple of open issues, some sort of very minor things, but one thing that may impact not only the FlexiGrid Yang work, but maybe other Ccamp Yang documents is really regarding the security section, the security considerations. So there's been sort of some pushback by the RFC editors just to make it very clear what the security implications are for some of this Yang work. Certainly in regards to WSON anyway, and that includes things like what may be writable and what modules sort of augment additional data nodes from, say, IETF network or T topology, and making sure that we make it very clear that we potentially inherit some of those sensitivities or particular subtrees So any potential issues equally apply to the new data nodes, that we have in the WSON or the FlexiGrid or the microwave Yang model. So thank you very much actually to John, our illustrious AD, for sort of reaching a conclusion here. So I guess the net is we're going to update the security section. I think very minor updates, just to say that we do sort of reuse some of the existing security best practice that's defined in other Yang modules, but also be aware that these nodes are writable and therefore present security risks. I think, therefore, we are very close to sort of having a final version that will be ready for last call. So it's just really the security section that needs to be updated now, and then addressing some of the some minor things, some nits, things like the date of code generation. I think that was another issue. So I think these are all tracked in our GitHub, so you can see that on the URL there. So before I start talking about the media channel document, which is the second document in my presentation, are there any questions for the topology document? Good. Okay, excellent. So the media channel is the sort of the connection across the FlexiGrid topology. So it's our FlexiGrid tunnel. It was sort of put on hold really until we finished the discussion on the FlexiGrid topology. We issued a new version of a relatively old document, actually just before the last IETF, and we've transitioned our weekly FlexiGrid call, and it's sort of bi-monthly actually, it's not necessarily weekly, from the topology discussion to the media channel discussion. So it's still a relatively recent document without a significant amount of new code. There are essentially a basic Yang proposal that is in the latest version of the document, which I think is 0.3. We still have lots of discussion, I think, ahead of us, how this actually gets used. There's a excuse me, sort of a limited set of vendors that are implementing or have implemented as well. So it will be good to know if there are, beyond the document authors, if there are other vendors who have implemented or are implementing or considering implementation. You'll be very welcome on the call, and we do try to copy updates from the calls directly to the list as well, to make sure that the working group are in fact part of this development process. So the sort of the main changes really are things like using the new prefix. We added a security section, sort of a trending topic right now. We fixed a variety of Yang errors that were mainly sort of historic, really, because this document hadn't been updated in over a year, and just try to make the more sort of the document more readable. What we will need to add for the next version is kind of the data model augmentation aspects as well. So what we augment and how we augment, and I guess we may sort of hit that issue again of the use of when statements and things as well. We will restart the FlexiGrid. I guess it's the media channel discussion now. Probably mid-August. I think you're just waiting for people, certainly the Europeans, to finish their holiday. So maybe mid to late August. I'll put the details, or we will put the details of the call onto the mailing list. So people are very welcome to attend. And then I guess we will just issue various iterations and try to encourage working group members to review and comment, and then hopefully we'll have a more sort of a version of the document that's more substantive in time for IETF 112. So any questions? Anyone still awake? Does everyone still hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Well, unfortunately for you, I also have the second presentation. So let me just jump straight into that. Cool. So what am I talking about? Yes, applicability statements. Yes, indeed. Just a general comment first of all. So there's two applicability statements I'm going to be talking about now. The first is the transport or transport MBI applicability statement, and then the second document isn't actually a Ccamp document; it's a TEAS document. But because it relates to packet optical integration, and there are sort of various Ccamp documents that are referenced in the applicability statement, we thought it might be nice for you just to sort of get an overview of the document and just be sort of made aware of the document. And just a general comment that as sort of engineers, we tend to be sort of quite good at inventing technology and protocol mechanisms and sort of crafting bits and bytes or generating Yang code to define function, but we often lack some of the sort of the bigger picture aspects. Is how are these Yang models or these protocols going to be used? Are they fit for purpose? What are the use cases? Are they applicable? Are there issues? What are the gaps? Are there operational considerations that we never considered? Are we going to break things quite significantly? So I think these applicability documents tend to be really useful, and it's certainly a good way to kind of advertise how some of the technology we've developed gets applied, and certainly any gaps, if identified, then those are obviously generally quite important to fix. So this first document was the sort of the product of a design team that dates back to 2018. So thank you very much. It's a long list of people there. We have published the output essentially from that design meeting, and it was we had a mini charter which was really just sort of identify the use cases for the transport MBI. So we essentially had things like ODU transit, EPL over ODU as well, sort of attributed / transparent client services, etc., and then a variety of topologies with things like sort of protection requirements, protection and restoration. And then what we could do is identify, well, what are the Yang models that we would use in order to deliver those types of services over these specific Yang models? How do we protect them? How do we secure them? And maybe even sort of more fundamentally, how do you compute them as well? So there are sort of path computation aspects there as well. So it's a relatively large document because this is not simple technology. I think we're up to sort of 100+ pages, and a variety of models are applied. And as you can see from the topology itself, the reference network is complex, I suppose. We've got multiple domains with sort of inter-AS, inter-domain networking required. So this is sort of at the fundamental level, our OTN network with tributary interfaces attached to routers across the optical network. Then we've got an ACTM-based control hierarchy. So we've got MDSE, and our focus is really on the MPIs, and those will be the interfaces between the domain controllers for each of the specific sort of maybe technology specific, vendor specific, or some kind of supervisor / sphere of responsibility. You're going to have a sort of different controller / management entity for each of those domains. And then when we're ready to kind of set up the sort of logical connectivity, so carry the client signals, the service itself across the topology, then we've got the tunnel setup, which is sort of TE based, and then the client setup. So we go through all of the phases. So sort of discovery, or maybe a precursor to that is inventory management, topology discovery, maybe sort of capability exchange, negotiation, not just between the nodes, which may be sort of LLVP or LMP, and that's generally sort of out of scope anyway, because it's quite sort of proprietary, but also how the MDSC and the PNC relationships are established. Maybe that's statically, maybe there's an automation or automated requirement there as well. And then we've got sort of the tunnel setup, and then the client setup, which includes things like mapping of signals into tunnels and things. And of course, there could be a variety of abstraction methods that are applied here. So for some PNCs, they may expose the full topology. Other PNCs may only exposed effectively a single hop across the network. It's an abstracted topology. So we've got the sort of black topology, white topology. So I've well, not just myself, but the design team have been working on this document for the best part of sort of 3 years, really, somewhere sort of around 2.5 years. There are thanks to a couple of the reviews that we received on the list, there are now a variety of open issues with the document itself, and it's mainly sort of editorial, and we will now need to kind of work through those. We had a routing directorate review from Dhruv, who did a really monumental sort of effort, because there's so much content here, and he's obviously very experienced with a variety of technologies, but sort of bringing all of these together for the applicability statement is quite kind of overwhelming for the reader, but he's done a really good job. So we're going to be working through those. We have a significant amount of code in the document as well, because we wanted to provide examples. So these are all essentially generated using JSON, and then you can sort of translate that, whatever sort of hyperpolyglot you want to use, to your favorite schema. But we've used JSON. We also developed a tool that would allow the JSON code to be, well, encoded, not only in the document, but extrapolated from the document, and then sort of compiled, obviously, because of the things like the 72-character limitation. We will need sort of next steps now. We will need to have a sort of an editorial session. I think Italo and myself have volunteered to do this, just to kind of go through the document and make the necessary changes just for readability, and there is a lot of cross-reference in the document. We refer to a variety of figures and sections, and just making sure all of those are sort of consistent, where we kind of reference within the document. I think it's better if we just have sort of 2 editors for that session, anticipating sort of half a day to do that. And then we will publish the new version of the document, respond to Dhruv, our sort of routing area directorate reviewer, and then we will request other members of the working group now review the document. I think as sort of part of that review process, we may try to, and I'm not sure how viable this will be, but slim down the document, put it on a diet, because it is just a very weighty document. If there's no way to do that without kind of losing content, substantive information, then we'll just leave it as is. And I suppose the other issue sort of highlighted on the slide here, really, for next steps, is considering just sort of how useful this document might be, and the fact that we do reference work, generally sort of ITU work as well. Should we remind some of our partners at other SDOs, and I'm thinking thinking ITU, but maybe OIF, maybe even MEF. Should we make them aware that we now think the document is stable and we will be progressing it through the IETF process? So that's kind of a question for the chairs and the working group as well.
Okay, so actually, we already did the working group last call for this document.
Yeah. So I just assumed that because we were going to make some edits to the document, and they may be only editorial, that we would have to go through another last call.
It depends on the type of edits, because I mean, after the working group last call, there is a number of iterations. There will be the security review, the operations review, etc., etc. And as part of those review, there will be comments to fix. So edits are for sure a part of that. If they are not major, and I mean, this is an informational document, so I don't expect that after those reviews we will have something completely different that needs to go through another working group last call. I think that all of the changes that can be done to the document that can be let me say, are not impacting the fact that the document has already passed the working group last call.
Yeah. So, okay, and it's definitely editorial. Okay, so I think what we can do then is Italo and I will have our review session and sort of publish the new version of the document. We'll send the list, kind of an update of what's changed, and if there is something that's substantive that needs to be reviewed by the working group again in detail, then obviously that's a decision for the chairs whether or not we need to last call that. If it is just sort of the editorial and just cleaning up and formatting, then great, we'll just kind of continue to move ahead and it will sort of progress through the pipeline.
Yep. Actually, cool. I was checking. And the draft has been submitted. The publication requested. That's the ASD state.
Yeah, I guess the IESG would be waiting for the routing directorate review as well before sort of processing that as well.
That's the one that Drew did, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But I thought you replied to most of the comments, didn't you?
Yeah, I have, yeah. But we still have more work to do.
Okay.
So I would be really keen to see if we can just have a little bit more brevity with the document, because I think 100 pages is I know there's a lot of code in there, granted as well, in the appendix. But I know that we may get some pushback that this is a particularly long document. So I just think it's worth just seeing if we could go on a bit of a diet. That's all. But we'll see if it's feasible.
Good.
I think
perfect.
I saw Hamian just pop up in the virtual mic list.
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, actually, this is useful work, and of course, we are having more modules, so it would be also necessary to reconsider if we need to continue working on that, even if after the publication of this document.
Yeah, this is an ongoing challenge, right? The problem that we have, and in fact, it's kind of a problem that we have with the next document I was going to talk about, which is the applicability of ACTN to POI, is that the use cases are continuing to evolve. And what we've tried to do, and sometimes it's very hard because we have a number of members of the design team, and everyone has their own use case or slight sort of deviation of the use case. But I've tried to, as sort of one of the editors, be quite tough about, let's have one use case or 1.5 use cases, and then work around that. And if there is a new use case, or if there is a significant set of extensions or feature creep for the existing use case, we have to be very careful, because it's a bit of a trap. As soon as we start sort of extending the use case, the document suddenly becomes massive, exponentially bigger in terms of problems and gaps, and what we should be really careful about is never closing these documents. They almost become living documents. This is a wider discussion maybe for the ADs and the chairs and the working group, and should we think about some of these applicability statements in the future as things that could be published, but then sort of continually updated without going through sort of the current method of an RFC BIS or something. So yes, thank you, Hao-Ming. That is a good point. I think with this document, we've now closed it, and we if there is something new in the future, maybe we just write a new document.
No problem. Fully agree. Yep. Thank you.
Cool. And it's well done for staying up so late, or getting up very early, or I'm not sure what it is, but it must be like 4 a.m. in China at the moment. So thank you, guys. So very sort of quickly onto my next part of the discussion, which is another applicability document, this time a TEAS document, but it's ACTN applied to packet over optical, so packet optical integration. I think the motivations are, or the intention of the work is very similar to our sort of applicability of the transport northbound interface, and that is, how do we use these technologies? So in this case, the ACTN architecture, the various functional components, the APIs, and our technology specific, in this case optical, and some packet Yang models for actually setting up POI services in provider networks. And it's kind of a due diligence of are the various IETF documents suitably informative, clear about how to use the technology, how to apply it, how to implement it. Are the Yang models themselves suitable for specific use cases? Do they contain the necessary information? Are they implementable? And then if gaps exist, what are they? Do we need to extend existing Yang models? Do we need new Yang models? And then, of course, there's the sort of operational and security aspects as well. With the ACTN POI work, actually, we did find a significant number of gaps, and that has sort of spawned additional sort of Yang development. So it's been a really useful exercise. So this is a slightly simpler topology. So there are a number of domains, 2 packet and 2 optical, and then there are sort of some slight sort of variation of scenarios here. So this could be, this entire network could be single provider, single operator, or it could be multi-provider, multi-operator. And it may be multi-provider, multi-operator at the packet only, but then single provider at the optical, or it could be in some situations and sort of optical interconnectivity between providers has kind of been sort of fraught with all sorts of pitfalls. But increasingly there is more integration as well as a requirement for automation. So we are considering the sort of inter-AS, inter-domain provider at the optical layer as well. So we cover the startup phase, so things like interface link discovery, and then you're right through the sort of the optical going up the stack into the packet aspects, as well as sort of SRT path discovery as well. So that's kind of the first phase of the use case, and then the second phase is how do we set up the services? So how do you communicate the request? How do you specify the constraints? What are the objective functions? Compute the service. Now set it up And of course, that's kind of a multi-layered approach with the server layer providing connectivity that then gets exposed to the client layer, or whatever you want to call it, the underlay or versus the overlay, and then sort of we've kind of focused on SRT path setup as well. Cool. So what are some of the gaps that we identified as we were kind of working through the various scenarios and seeing what IETF technology was available to us? Well, it turns out packet and optical network inventory is very important. Yes, of course, but typically these systems have been proprietary and sort of provider specific, operator specific. But now there's more of a, I think, a demand for having an interoperable capability. So you could have offline network inventory that could be made available when you're setting up a particular type of services, because there's a lot of sort of IETF technology that just presumes that setting up a service is sort of computed across online resources. So whatever you have available in your TE database and your LSDB, well, now we've got an inventory database. So it's kind of a what if scenario.
Dan, I'm really sorry, but we are a bit behind. Can you start wrapping up, please?
Right. So these are the various gaps that we've identified. The discussions are generally sort of via a weekly conference call, and issues are documented and specified as part of the GitHub, so you can see sort of the open issues. I won't spend any time going through those. Obviously, I've just taken too much time already, but considering the area of technology, we just wanted to highlight this document for people that may not have seen it. If you have the time, then we would certainly appreciate a review of the document. So thank you. That was the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So we have now Aomian. And okay. Aomian, please.
Yes, I'm here. I see on the screen a screen share is being started, so it's not there yet.
But you can see my screen. Let me see what's happening. Entire screen. Now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is Hamian speaking, and I'm presenting two documents here. And the first one is a working group document, Ccamp climate signal young, that has been adopted for a while. Next, please. So it's not a big update this time. We have just revised a few iterations of the draft to integrate the E-tree as a client signal in this update, and we are also targeting on satisfy the multi-technology applicability. So this is a kind of supporting of the POI and other multi-technology coordinations. Next, please. So okay, in this page we have two main changes since the last presentation, and the first one is just mentioned is the module is extended to support E-tree, but it's not in the main module, but it's in the Ethernet transport types. And here we are having a kind of access rule, and we have added some new child identities under the base identity, including the primary rule, the backup rule, and the leave for access. So these three rules will be helping the configuration to be complete when representing each client signal. And the second change we have made is an editorial. We actually implemented this module for validation in ONAP project called the CCVPN. And we in this project we have been using the Ethernet service YANG module as an ACT and MPI, and we included into this document as an independent section with the referencing to the ONAP website. Next, please. Okay, so that's all the change for this document, and we are also checking and understanding what are the potential gaps so far, and we are trying to cover more client signals, and we also are also driving to the maturity before we request for working group last call, but there are a few open issues still. And we believe we are converging.
Do you already know which other client signals are you planning to cover? Because
well,
otherwise, we fall into the problem that Dan was describing before. We risk to have an endless document in terms of versions.
True. Yeah. Actually, well, this was originally designed for the client signals based on OTN, and actually in previous RFCs we had a kind of a complete list on the GPID signals, and it's almost done now. So we are just doing some kind of consistency check before we move forward.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments to this work, or I'm continuing to the next one?
Please go ahead.
Oh, please, next. Okay, and the next document we are presenting is the performance monitoring. Yeah, this is an individual draft, and the previous presentation I checked, it was on 108. It's 1 year ago. Next, please. And yeah, because it's 1 year from now, so I'm re-emphasizing the motivation of this work, and it's highly based on the client signal document presented before, because this is the document specifying how to do the performance monitoring based on the client signal configurations, and we are summarizing a group of parameters listed in this table from layer 0 to layer 2 switching technology, and it's not enumerate anything but everything, but it's a kind of good representation on what kind of parameters can be monitored. And the next, please. So the changes, okay, we are now having 2 more co-authors, and we welcome them for their comments, contribution, and supporting. We made some editorial changes to, especially in the module, to make it in compliance with 8407, the guideline of YANG modules. And we have also extended the bandwidth to ingress and egress bandwidth, which means we, even for the same parameters we are monitoring, we are extending to be more explicit on where the parameter is. And this was done by adding two new child identity under the performance parameter types. And the next. So, okay, the next two pages are actually two main issues regarding this document. And the first one is always most important for the young module draft, is talking about the model relationship. So if we stay from the perspective of Ccamp, okay, we imported the two client signal configuration modules, and we align the index with that one. Okay, this is a kind of advantage. But if we look from the perspective of a bigger scope, actually there are more than one performance monitoring drafts in IETF, and there was proposal to reuse some types or even have common types for the performance monitoring. And here in the slides, we are listing two of them. One is from the TIS working group talking about ACT and telemetry for performance monitoring, and the other is from Beth, who is doing the PM on the VPN level. So there are kind of overlapping, but not fully overlapping. So it would be very challenging for do a kind of cross working group coordination. It would be very appreciated for the experts on site if you have any ideas on how to move this forward, and if we can sit down together to understand how we can make use of each other, that would be more than perfect. And next, please. Okay, and the second big issue would be the kind of module structure. So we captured the tree so far, and we are using one unified structures to do the monitoring of different parameters. So we have a kind of parameter names referring to what kind of parameter we are monitoring, like if it is a delay, the BR or whatever. And we have then for each of the parameters, we are having numerical value and the corresponding unit and the time interval. So, but be careful. We need to also looking at the kind of features for each detailed parameters, like for the bandwidth, for example, it can be measured by rate, it can be measured by other kind of parameters. So we need to have a kind of uniform format for each of the performance parameters, but they may be different with each other. And the second issue, which is listed as 89 on the GitHub, is, okay, we need to understand at which point the measurement is required, because even for the same parameters, if you do the sampling on the different point, endpoint or access point, the parameters numerical value can be different. So we also need to have some consensus on this. And the next. Okay, this is the final page, and we are planning for something. I think we can decompose it to a stage before the working group adoption, and we can do some for some issues we can do it even after. So before the working group adoption, we need to confirm the work is useful, and the good news is we almost receive a lot of positive feedback. And we also think we need to agree on the model relationship, especially how to coordinate with other PM module. I think as long as we have a kind of approach, it can be proceeded. And for the other open issues, we can that would be a more detailed technologies, and we can do it after the adoption. Is we need to agree on the module structure, how to represent the different considerations for different parameters, and we are going to working on the details for each parameters, and including the sampling point. So that's all for the presentation.
Thank you. So, in order to confirm if the work is useful or not, maybe we can take this question to the list. Actually, I mean, this is not the first and probably not the last document on performance monitoring. So I would assume that it's for sure something useful. We need to check if there is interest from the working group to work on it or not. But, usefulness should be out of question here.
Okay.
So the next we have now the OTN slicing presentation from Iowa, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So yeah, this is Iowa Guo, and I'm presenting here the individual draft of framework and data model for OTN network slicing on behalf of all the co-authors and contributors. Next. So here's an overall summary of the major updates since the last IETF, and this is the third revision of the draft. So on the admin end, we have established a weekly meeting on Thursday, 10 to 11 a.m. To discuss the topics, and we have also established a GitHub to facilitate the exchange and submission of the documents and updates. We have had a good expanded list of authors and contributors since the last meeting, and with thanks to many of the much of the interest coming from the community, and welcome all those contributors and authors. So on the draft side, so the update is mainly focusing on answering this question. So what is the OTN slicing, and what is the relationship between an OTN slice and an IETF network slice being defined in the IETF TIS working group? So to make it clear, we did the update and added a use case of which is the end-to-end network slicing to answer how an OTN slicing is in the scenario of an end-to-end slicing, which could incorporate the work coming from the IETF network slice. And we clarify the definition of an OTN slice and an OTN slice controller, which manages configures the OTN slice. And we also make explicit the relationship between an OTN slice and an IETF network slice, and how they can work together to form an end-to-end network slice in the OTN domain, as well as in the network domains with OTN in the middle. And we defined two abstraction methods that could be used to create OTN slices, which is a connectivity based, as well as a resource reservation based OTN slice. And then we also updated the description for OTN slice controller recursion to deal with the multi-domain use case. So I'm going to go through all those updates in the next few slides. Next. So with the definition and scope of OTN slice, we aligned the definition with the current ongoing work of IETF network slicing in that network slice draft, in which we basically sort of make the OTN slice a particular OTN virtual network topology that connects an OTN endpoint with the same term to satisfy specific service level objects, but expressed in terms of OTN technology. Okay? And in that respect, an OTN slice is essentially a technology-specific realization of an IETF network slice in the OTN domain. And on the right side is a figure that describes the scope of an OTN slice, both in the single domain and multi-domain scenario, where the OTN slice for a single domain, the scope is between the access link and access link of the domain. And in the case of a multi-domain, for each of the domains that an OTN slice is established on, the scope of that slice, we call it a segment slice, its scope is between the access link and the inter-domain link of the OTN domain. And those OTN segment slices could be created in both hierarchical, meaning recursive, or sequential in a stitched combination, just like the IETF network slice is being defined in the TIS draft. Next. Yeah. So here we have updated the two abstraction methods to configure OTN slices. The first method is a connectivity-based OTN slice, in which an OTN slice is abstracted as just a set of endpoint to endpoint links, and each of the links is formed by just an end-to-end tunnel across the OTN network, right? And this is in line with the current description of the IETF network slice. And we also have seen the second method for abstracting an OTN slice based on resource reservation, and in which an OTN slice is abstracted as an abstract topology, and within that abstract topology, the resources allocated to an OTN slice could be shared between multiple endpoints, and the user of the slice could actually perform on-demand commissioning of resources within the slice to satisfy their own need of connectivities between endpoints within the OTN slice. And this basically comes with the benefit of having a better optimization of resources, of sharing resources, and also the user has the flexibility to make use of the resources within the slice as they need. Here, there's actually a real-world example in which we see a good benefit of this resource-based slice is in the case, let's say, if I have an OTN slice used to support high quality and real-time broadcasting of sports events between multiple stadiums and the TV station. And because at any day there are only a few stadiums that has the event, and so it only needs to create a few connections between the stadiums and the TV station. It does not need to maintain a full end-to-end connection between each TV station and between each stadium and the TV station to basically to start with. Right? So this resource-based OTN slice could well satisfy the requirement of such an slice request. Actually, these two methods of abstraction are very similar to the virtual network concepts as defined in RFC 8453, where we have the VN type 1, which corresponds to connectivity-based slicing, and type 2, VN type 2 is actually for resource-based slicing. Next.
Can I ask you to speed up a little bit, because we just have 5 minutes left and
Sure.
Another presentation. Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Sure. So I'll go real quick. So on this page is we defined the OTN slice controller as well as how it interfaces with the IETF network slice controller. As you see here, the OTN slice controller NBI is technology specific, which could have requests come in directly from the orchestrator to create an OTN slice. And on the other hand, the IETF network slice controller can also make use of the OTN slice controller to create to translate a technology agnostic slice configuration into an OTN specific slice configuration and provision the OTN slice in the OTN network domain. But the IETF network slice controller will also have the flexibility to not use the OTN slice controller, but talks directly with the underlying PNC or the network controller to create the network slice. Next. Okay. So this one discusses about the recursion for OTN slicing in multi-domain, and there are actually two cases. One is to use the recursion between OTN slice controller to support the OTN slice across multiple domains, and the other option is to rely on the MDSC to PNC recursion to cover that, and the OTN slice controller only interacts with a single MDSC. Next. So the YAM model for the MPI of the OTN slice controller is not changed, and we discussed about basically the model is just to define how we coloring the T links and in a T topology and use the T topology, the colored T topology to configure the OTN slice and send it to the PNC. And so here we discussed the possibility of coloring the T links using both the type and number of audio container as well as the number of time slots. Both options could be used for coloring the T link resources. And this model will perhaps be updated in the next revision. Next. So here are the next steps. We will continue updating the YAM model for MPI. and we start to develop the YAM models for the MBI by also looking into the related work as listed here. And we will be covering the slicing for external links, meaning the accessing inter-domain link, which supports client signal other than OTN. We will address comments and reviews. And also the authors believes that basically this draft is ready for working group adoption based on the consensus on the major part of the slice, and also a good interest in the community to move forward the work. And the YAM model needs updates, but is stable for the MPI, and we have a clear path for the MBI model development. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. We will take comments to the list because we are really running out of time. So we need to jump to the last presentation on Flex Ethernet. Could you please squeeze it into 5 minutes? Would that be possible?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think it's possible. This YAM module actually provides the point of view of how the FlexE YAM module can be modeled. Could you please connect to the next slide? Thank you. The provides the FlexE management from a service provider's point of view. From the start, the FlexE group can be configured at first as a whole bundle, and provides FlexE files and the time slots. And then from one piece to another piece, each FlexE client can be configured with time slots. And from telecom transport network, FlexE synchronization is also an important piece. So we added the support of the synchronization configuration from the start. To the next slide, please. So this FlexE data plane, I will not reiterate this slide. To the next, please. This global perspective of the FlexE management model. The FlexE client on left is augmented from the IETF interface. And on the right, the top layer is a FlexE group, which contains multiple FlexE files, and with free time slots are all contained in such a container. And synchronization FlexE file is can be retrieved on the FlexE file. To the next slide, please. So this is the core tree diagrams. On the left is the FlexE group container with all the stuff on a FlexE group and all the Flex files with the synchronization file number. On the right is the interface for the FlexE client. For each client, we can support the configuration of the client number and all the time slot list. Please go to the next. So this is the initial version of this module. We'd like to see people can have a review of this draft and feedback, so we can update it later on. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the presentation and for squeezing it into a few minutes. My suggestion is to start the discussion on the mailing list to see there is interest from the working group to work on this topic and to collect the first feedbacks.
Good, thank you.
It's now time to wrap up. Thanks a lot to everyone once again for participating, for your contribution and your presentations. And have a very good rest of the day. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.